Tonight on Prime Time, in Beirut, a precision strike has removed a leading Hezbollah commander, marking one of the most consequential escalations in months. More military action despite last year's US brokered truce. Israeli officials say the move was necessary to prevent Hezbollah from regrouping, while pressure now falls on Lebanon's government. A year since the ceasefire, but the strikes continue. Good evening. Israel says it carried out a controlled strike in the southern part of Beirut, eliminating senior Hezbollah figure Haytham Ali Tabatabai. This comes despite a ceasefire negotiated by Washington last year. Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the group must not be allowed to rebuild and insists the authorities in Lebanon are expected to meet their responsibility to strip Hezbollah of its weapons. Here's our report.
Five people have been killed in Lebanon, including a Hezbollah top military official, Haytham Ali Tabatabai, the acting chief of staff of the Iran-backed group. It's after an Israeli airstrike hit an apartment block in a southern suburb of Beirut on Sunday. Lebanon's health ministry said about 28 people were also wounded. Israel confirmed it carried out the targeted hit, the first on the outskirts of the Lebanese capital in months. Hezbollah also confirms the information. In a televised statement on Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel would not allow Hezbollah to rebuild its forces.
I thank the IDF and the security forces who carried out a professional, precise and successful operation today. The policy I lead is crystal clear. Under my leadership, the State of Israel will not allow Hezbollah to rebuild its power, and we will not allow it to return to pose a threat to the State of Israel. I expect the Lebanese government to fulfill its commitment to disarm Hezbollah.
Tabatabai is the most senior Hezbollah commander to be killed by Israel since the start of a ceasefire last November, aimed at ending more than a year of hostilities between the two. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun is calling for the international community to intervene and stop the strikes, saying Israel's actions violate the agreement that ended 13 months of conflict.
Okay, we'll have two perspectives on this story, but first let's cross over to political commentator Mohammed Najib, who is in Ramallah, Gaza for us. Mr. Najib, thanks very much for joining us. Give us your evaluation of Lebanon's reaction to this. How are they interpreting this breach? And I'd be interested in your view on what this might say about Lebanon's ability to ultimately protect its own airspace.
Yeah, actually the Israeli strike yesterday that killed Haytham Ali Tabatabai, the chief of staff of Hezbollah, embarrassed Lebanon, the state, and shows that the Lebanese government has no control over its skies, and the state of Lebanon condemned the Israeli attack, but it has a shortage and lack of defense capability to prevent its skies from Israeli strike. Actually, the Lebanese government is under intense pressure from faction who say that it was a national security failure by the Lebanese government, but also they know that the Lebanese government cannot confront Hezbollah because that will lead for the collapse of the Lebanese cabinet. So it is embarrassment, and also it is raising the question and raise the concern among the Lebanese people because the ordinary Lebanese people are exhausted from the war, and they live between economic collapse and economic crisis in Lebanon, and they're concerned from the eruption or the resumption of another war. So they want stability, not escalation, but they feel they are paying the price of decision that made beyond Lebanese borders. I mean in Iran or other actions.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting what you say, Mr. Najib, about this internal pressure, the political factions. For our viewers who are perhaps less familiar with Lebanese politics, I mean, it's a very complex situation. The political dynamic in the country is very complex. Just give us a sense for our viewers what's actually going on inside the sort of political establishment in Lebanon at the moment.
Actually, the Lebanese Prime Minister was calling for the disarmament of Hezbollah, but Hezbollah challenged that and said they are unwilling to be disarmed, and they threat of internal war with the Lebanese government. So after months since the stop of the war and ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel under international mediations, the Lebanese government failed to disarm Hezbollah, and Israel was threatening day after day that if Hezbollah not be disarmed and rebuild its military capabilities in southern Lebanon and below the blue line, then they will target Hezbollah. And what's happened yesterday was a big hit of Hezbollah, and shown that Israel also have strong intelligence inside Hezbollah, inside Lebanon, and also there is no immunity for any place in Lebanon, even in the capital Beirut. And the Israelis conducted the strike in the middle of the day in the center of Beirut, which raised the fears of the Lebanese people.
And you know, Lebanese society, like any other, has got people within it from different groups with different points of view, different perspectives. Nevertheless, is there a consensus now building, do you think, amongst ordinary citizens about the approach that they would like their government to take with this conflict?
I think after yesterday's strike and the increase of concerns and fearness among the Lebanese, they will become more supporter for the government pressure to disarm Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is now an obstacle in the reconstruction of Lebanon. No one will reconstruct Lebanon or pay for the reconstruction of Lebanon or to rescue Lebanon from the economic hardship as long as Hezbollah is armed and continued its military reconstruction. So they know that this will be an obstacle in front of economy and also in front of the security stability for Lebanon, and then will increase the support of those who calls for the disarmament of Hezbollah and to support the government in this direction.
Mr. Najib, there are obviously many interested actors from other parts of the world invested in this. There is a long-standing relationship between Lebanon and France, for example. There are many regional Arab states with strong connections to the country. Do you think that it's time now for perhaps some of those friends of the country to step in and offer more support?
Yes, of course, because Beirut was calling on France and Arab leaders and capitals to act as a stabilizer and to prevent the eruption of the war between Israel and Lebanon, and to pressure Israel in diplomatic means and to support the Lebanese army. So this is what they call for, the rebuild of capacity, and this escalation don't keep repeating, then that will be a chance. But if this escalation between Hezbollah and Israel continues, then the question will be difficult, and those cannot operate as a stabilizer between Israel and Hezbollah, because Israel claims that if Hezbollah rebuild its military capabilities and will not be disarmed by the Lebanese government, then they will continue targeting Hezbollah. And what's happened since the ceasefire, that Israel feel free to target Hezbollah anywhere in southern Lebanon, but what happened yesterday was targeting the chief of staff, the second man in Hezbollah, and in the center of the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
And what is the reality of the role of the Lebanese armed forces at the moment? Obviously, we've heard from Israel this criticism about the armed forces being entirely independent of the state. You've spoken about the separate role of Hezbollah. Just give us your assessment of the current picture of where the Lebanese armed forces fit into this at the moment.
Actually, the Lebanese army knows it couldn't confront Hezbollah at this time, and also they couldn't stop Israeli operations. So they feel that their role is to maintain internal stability and to work with the UNIFIL. So the state institution operating inside the fragmented sovereignty. There is no sovereignty over Lebanon by the Lebanese army, and they try to maintain the internal security stability, but also they cannot challenge Hezbollah or confront Hezbollah or protect the Lebanese skies from the Israeli continuous airstrikes or drones roaming the skies of Lebanon around the clock.
And finally, Mr. Najib, I just want to get your prognosis, your prediction for this is such a difficult situation. Lebanon, of course, has been in difficult situations before. The citizens of Lebanon are well known for enduring hardship and kind of carrying on in the face of it. What are your hopes and fears for the country over the next 6, 12, 24 months?
I think the Lebanese president who tours the European and world countries and have good ties and welcomed in the Western capitals can work hard with Arab and Europeans, mediators and supporters of Lebanon to convey a message through the United States to pressure Israel to stop the escalation and give the Lebanese government a chance and more opportunities to rebuild its economic situation, because it's not like for the Lebanese to go now and said we want to disarm the Hezbollah while the Lebanese live in severe economic hardship. So they have to show them signs of prosperity first, and then they will step by step goes to reach an agreement or to support the Lebanese government call for the disarmament of Hezbollah or find a solution for that. It's not like just as Israel wish and want to disarm or to clash with them, because also that will lead for internal war between Hezbollah and the Lebanese army, and this is also is not in the interest of the Lebanese people or the supporters of Lebanon.
Mr. Najib, we thank you for your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from Ramallah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my next guest tonight is Mr. Maurice Hirsch from the Jerusalem Centre for Security and Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem. Mr. Hirsch, thank you very much for joining us on Prime Time. Very good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Harry.
Clearly a targeted strike, Israel arguing this is essential for national security. But how does the country weigh up this need for targeted security strikes with the risk perhaps of any more conflict dragging the region into a broader cooperation?
So I think we're actually almost at a historic date of the 27th of November 2024. The ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, after a year of unprovoked attacks, had now brought an end to the war. And there were conditions to that, obviously. The conditions were that Hezbollah was disarmed, that Hezbollah no longer would provide a danger or present any type of danger to Israel's security in any way, shape or form. Unfortunately, whilst the Lebanese government has had over a year in order to implement those ceasefire agreements, that commitment, unfortunately it hasn't. And so what we've seen over the last year is Hezbollah regrouping, reforming, rearming, reconstituting its fighting force, and preparing itself to again attack Israel. We won't wait again, unfortunately, to see another unprovoked attack from Hezbollah, and we will act as in a preemptive strike.
And there is a sense, isn't there, that the Lebanese government is struggling to curtail Hezbollah at the moment. I mean, we heard some of that from our previous guest, that there's a reluctance, a reticence to really tackle Hezbollah as aggressively as many people would like. Are there specific things that the Israeli government believe the Lebanese government must do, should do, could do differently to become more effective at this work?
There certainly are a very long list of things that the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army could and should be doing. They should be disarming Hezbollah. They should be ensuring that the arms caches, the weapons that they have now been smuggling in over the last 6 to 8 months, including long-range rockets, should not be passing through the border into Lebanon. And if they are, they should be seized and destroyed by the Lebanese authorities. Allowing Hezbollah to continue to function, to continue to really bring about this disaster for all of Lebanon, is not in Lebanon's best interest. And so all the time that the Lebanese government refrains from taking this really essential actions against Hezbollah, they are unfortunately just bringing more and more warfare onto Lebanon. Israel understands obviously that Hezbollah may respond, but it's something that we cannot again allow the Radwan forces, which Taftavai was one of the commanders of the Radwan forces previously. We cannot allow those forces to again regroup on Israel's northern border and again prepare themselves to massacre Israeli civilians. That is something which the Lebanese government could be doing so much more to ensure that it doesn't happen, and yet they don't seem to have that really desire at all to combat Hezbollah.
I mean, some criticism of the fact that the continuation of strikes undermines the Washington brokered ceasefire. But I guess, do you think that that concept of the ceasefire, you know, it's been there for over a year now, despite strikes taking place. Do you think that that needs reevaluating in some sense? Has the strategy kind of almost outgrown the ceasefire in a sense?
I think what we cannot allow ourselves to sink back into is the situation that we had after 2006 with the UN Security Council Resolution 1701, where everyone just turns a blind eye to the constant breaches of the ceasefire by Hezbollah. This cannot be allowed to return. This is part of Israel's really change of doctrine that we've seen after the October 7 massacre, and then the war that started with Hezbollah at Hezbollah's initiation, of course, on the 8th of October. This is something which Israel has changed its doctrine, will not allow that same thing to happen. And it's not that we need a new framework for the ceasefire. We just need to ensure that the Lebanese government actually fulfills its commitments and its the basic requirements of the ceasefire agreement. If it doesn't, there will be consequences.
And in terms of how those consequences are prosecuted, we've seen Mr. Netanyahu get very tough on the settler attacks recently, talk about the importance of proportionate response, law and order being essential. We know that the strikes have been targeted strategically. What is the strategy, the list of criteria that the IDF works to when it comes to proportionality, avoiding humanitarian casualties? Because these are not indiscriminate attacks, of course.
No, certainly not. I mean, let's talk about a little bit about the idea, the concept of proportionality in international law, in the laws of war. It means that when you strike a target, the incidental damage should not be excessive in relation to the concrete military advantage expected from attacking that target. Taking out, as we did over this last period of time, a large number of arms caches of long-range weapons and rockets is something which is obviously a clear military target. Thankfully, those targets have been relatively isolated and they haven't caused tremendous incidental damage. Even with the strike on Taftavai, we saw that there were other senior Hezbollah leaders who were killed together with him, and the incidental damage certainly wasn't in proportionality in the laws of war excessive in relation to the concrete and military advantage gained from attacking that target. So really, when you put it into that context, proportionality isn't, well, they shot one rocket, so we shot one rocket back. That is not the idea of proportionality in the laws of war. It's a completely different idea.
And finally, Maurice, just looking ahead, hypothetically speaking, what would the conditions need to look like for Israel to seriously consider reducing military activity along that northern border? How far away are we at this point to a sense of reassurance that that could be possible?
I fear that we are quite a distance away. We haven't seen any what we need in order to regain the security of Israel's north, in order to regain and restabilize, as it were, Lebanon, is to rid ourselves of Hezbollah. It's in Lebanon's interest. It's in Israel's interest. It's in everyone's interest, with the exception of Iran. Iran has the interest to continue using Hezbollah as its proxy to destabilize the area. And that's something that we need to see. The French want Hezbollah demilitarized and dismantled. The Europeans want Hezbollah demilitarized and dismantled. The Americans want the same thing. And I believe it should be really the demand of the Lebanese government. And so when we can get to that stage where Hezbollah no longer exists, then that will be good for Lebanon, good for Israel, and good for the region. And that is where we need to really get to say, you know what, it should almost be understood as Israel helping the Lebanese government in order to get rid of this really tremendous cancer that has grown within Lebanon and that is strangling Lebanon from within. And that is Hezbollah. And so any of these actions that promote the goal of getting rid of Hezbollah, dismantling Hezbollah, ensuring that it no longer poses a danger to either Lebanon or to Israel is, I think, a positive step forward.
Mr. Hirsch, we thank you for your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, after the break, we'll take a closer look at Damascus's worsening cash squeeze as residents navigate failing ATMs. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching PrimeTime. Damascus is now contending with a tightening cash squeeze where even routine withdrawals are becoming difficult and banking services are faltering across the city. Well, analysts point to the long grind of conflict alongside sustained sanctions, arguing both have driven the country's liquidity to a critical threshold.
Long queues at ATMs, multiple trips across the city and disrupted networks are the latest signs of the crisis in Syria's capital, Damascus. Every day, residents face these challenges just to withdraw money. Syria is grappling with a deepening cash shortage, with withdrawal limits, stalled electronic payments and malfunctioning banking services disrupting daily life.
We sometimes have to travel from far away and come several times. And as you can see, there's always a long queue in front of the ATMs. This happens for several reasons. Sometimes the network is disrupted, sometimes the power goes out, and on top of that, every citizen is allowed to withdraw only 3 times a day.
Experts say the crisis reflects the combined impact of years of conflict, international sanctions, and tightening monetary policy, which have pushed liquidity to the breaking point.
In reality, the central bank has frozen liquidity under the assumption that this would stabilize the Syrian pound. This logic simply doesn't hold. If you have 1 billion Syrian pounds in your bank account, but can only withdraw 200,000 per week, the existing economic system is being destroyed. All of these factors together are collapsing the Syrian economy and further destabilizing the market.
Economists warn that unless cash supplies are restored and the digital payment system strengthened, the liquidity crunch could spill over into broader financial and social sectors, putting further strain on an already weakened economy.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss this is A-News's Nigar Shirinova. Nigar, good to see you on PrimeTime. Whose fault is this then? Is this more about government decisions on monetary policy, or is it more the fault of external pressure on things like sanctions?
Actually, Guy, to be honest, according to my observation from the news, the media outlets which we have access, the cause actually is both internal and external. So we cannot blame only the government, or we cannot say that it's only the external factor which causes this problem. So internally, this comes up from the years of conflict. It's from 2011, which is more than 13 years actually. The country, Syria, is coming from the big conflict, war. So it definitely had a big cause to this problem. Mm-hmm. And also there are some external factors which have very big influence. For example, sanctions like US sanctions, the Caesar Act, and also European Union's measures. They also has a great impact to this problematic situation which is now going on in the Syria. So we can say that the problem is both internal and external, and now they are trying to fix this problem, but whether they will or they will not, we will see from the upcoming days and the news.
It's a big question, isn't it? And obviously the government has been under huge pressure, incredibly difficult job to try and rebuild a country, reorientate that country in relationship to a world that is now changed so dramatically. How much ability does this government have within it to actually manage public finances in an effective way, do you think?
Yeah, actually now what I read, for example, today I read from our news, I saw in the news that they are trying to control the situation there, because I read the news that in the Sweden region of the Syria, there are even some protests, so there is a public frustration there. So the government, naturally, they trying to control the situation to not make this problem even bigger. But as we can see, and I listened to some experts who were talking about this today, they said that the government now in Syria, they're trying to solve this problem in a short term, but not in a long term, because they more are exchange rate of the money is going down, so the Syrian pound is actually depreciating. There is a huge inflation in the Syria right now, and they are losing the value of their money. And they try to fix the problem with giving some help to some people, and also they should give some salaries to people. So they are trying to keep that, and they are trying to get help from the international banks. But there is a problem with international banks and investors to the Syria, because now it's the reconstruction period has already started, and if the economic crisis will continue like this, there will be questions from the outside investors. So should they continue this process in Syria, or is there more problematic situation are waiting for them in the future? So the situation is
it's very interesting,
harsh.
Isn't it? I mean, in one sense, you could argue that this is a crisis that the multilateral banks were tailor-made for, the people in need. And those citizens themselves, those ordinary members of the public that are going about their business, that are perhaps prevented from taking all of their money out of the bank. I mean, what is the current situation in terms of, you mentioned protests there, the confidence that the public has in this government at the moment?
So now actually, as I said earlier, mentioned also, the government put some restrictions, so in order to control this situation there, because they should control actually this, so they put restrictions so they can withdraw their money only 3 times in a day. As I read from today's news. So there is a limitations, and people are they have some concerns because there are a lot of long queues in front of the ATMs, or sometimes they are just going to withdraw their salaries, their money, and they cannot do it because there is not enough cash in the banks. So this is this causes big frustration among the public. But still government is trying to control the situation. They're controlling the exchange offices in the city, in the country, and also they put some limitations 3 times in a day, so at least they are giving money, but with some kind of control. So as I said earlier, they are trying to manage the situation, but as some experts mentioned earlier when I listened to them, so it is only for the short term. Now they are doing this. But in long term, they need to come up with other solutions.
It's very interesting, this, isn't it? We saw around the 2008 financial crisis, we've seen other situations, COVID-related situations, where once there's a sense of a run on a bank, the situation very quickly gets away from you as a government. So I'm assuming they will be very cognizant of that. And wanting to make sure they balance up this control with the need not to control the public too tightly and risk widespread protests.
So they're they're trying to keep the balance, but still, as I read, the public frustration is growing, and it also, I read that it's also from region to region. In some regions, still people are waiting and believing to the government, so they have the hopes that this is for a short time, this is the period after the conflict, reconstruction period. So there are people who are really hopeful for the positive future, but there are also regions, I read about protests in Sweden today, so people there are very frustrated, and they are also claiming that they cannot find the cash in their region, so they need to go to other regions just to withdraw some money from their bank accounts. So it also differs from region to region inside Syria.
And we've seen, haven't we, Mr. Al-Shara touring the world, meeting other leaders in an attempt to rebuild Syria's brand, if you like, reputation with other countries around the world. How severe do you think the political consequences could be of this crisis with the country's current leadership?
This is actually a very interesting question. So the conflict was for a very long period of time. So now we see the causes of the conflict, what it caused. The cities, the countries, actually, we can say that it's destroyed. So it cannot be just in 1 year, the reconstruction and everything getting back and making the country super running. So it's a very hard job. And for the leadership of the country, it's a challenge. But I think that especially the countries in the region, like Turkey, Lebanon, or Jordan, they would not, from my point of view, they would not like the crisis to be bigger, the economic crisis and also the political crisis, because there is also a problem of migration, which those countries are facing still. So the refugees are going to those countries, and regionally in that region it's very hard for those countries as well. So I think that the countries in the region, they would also like to support the government there and to try to help them to revive, and so regionally it's like this.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's not just about Syria, is it? The success of the country is almost every regional actor is invested in the country's success. They're
dependent to each other.
Yeah. Very interesting. Nigar, thank you very much for coming in to discuss that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we're back, Murad Hamami will be here breaking down the top business news stories of the day. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Now, Murad Hamami is here with the very latest business news stories. Murad, what have you got for us?
Well, we've got a lot of interesting stories today, Guy. We'll be talking about spending trends, drug maker gains, and EVs, and a lot more. Let's just into it, shall we? We begin tonight with a look ahead to the week in global markets, where retailers and analysts are watching how strained household budgets may shape the run-up to Black Friday. New forecasts suggest that consumers are likely to prioritize essentials, with retailers adjusting expectations as promotional activity intensifies.
From Black Friday kicking off holiday shopping in the U.S. to Bitcoin coming under fire, these are the stories to watch in business and finance in the coming week. Focus on U.S. consumer spending will come into view next week with Black Friday. The big start to holiday shopping season arrives as data have shown consumer sentiment slumping and inflation staying firm. But a few solid years for the U.S. stock market could be making particularly higher income consumers feel wealthier and ready to shop. Tuesday's delayed release of September retail sales will also offer insight into consumer spending. The budget wait is almost over in the UK, but market volatility is likely not. Finance Minister Rachel Reeves is expected to need to raise tens of billions of pounds to meet her fiscal targets in Wednesday's budget. That has the Labour government walking a tightrope as it tries to reassure bond markets that it can be trusted to be fiscally prudent, while appeasing voters that pledges to not hike taxes will not be broken. Recent selling in bonds, sterling, and bank shares shows markets on edge. Alibaba announces earnings on Tuesday. The stock has almost doubled this year as investors vie for a slice of the red-hot Chinese AI sector. But shares fell this month as the company faced allegations that it provides tech support for Chinese military operations against targets in the U.S., the Financial Times reported. Alibaba has denied the accusations. The company has since announced an aggressive push into consumer AI, but that market is increasingly crowded. Bitcoin has lost roughly a third in value since early October's record high, as investors grow increasingly nervous of anything that has risen that much that quickly. The crypto market as a whole has lost over $1 trillion in value since Bitcoin's all-time high. Bitcoin is firmly below $90,000, and a so-called death cross has materialized on the charts this week, where the 50-day moving average crosses below the 200-day, often a sign of more losses ahead.
Well, let's cross over to Washington, D.C. now and get the latest from our correspondent, Nick Harper, who has news on a new survey that's just been released.
Well, Murad, it's going to be a leaner season this year, a definite tightening of purse strings as US shoppers look to scale back their holiday spending. On Thursday, it's Thanksgiving, followed by Black Friday and then Cyber Monday, traditionally all big sales events that give budget-conscious consumers a chance to find a deal or two, or even get a head start on their Christmas gift shopping. But a survey from Deloitte shows Americans are planning to spend 4% less this year compared to last year. The reason? The continued high cost of living, tariffs pushing up prices, and general uncertainty about the economy. Importantly, spending less is not something that's normally seen at this time of year. Previous Deloitte surveys over the last 4 years have consistently shown that shoppers plan to spend more. To break that down even further, lower incomes Americans, those earning less than $50,000 a year, say they'll spend as much as 12% less than last year, while those owning more than $200,000 a year still plan to scale back as well, noting that they'll cut their spending by 18% this year. Consumer confidence is currently hovering around its lowest level in more than 3 years. People are worried about a downturn, with the US economy heading into 2026 on a potentially shaky footing. Inflation has been edging up since April, and a separate survey showed that more than 2/3 of Americans say they are particularly worried about job security and finances heading into the new year. If there's a silver lining in any of this, it's for discount retailers. The likes of Gap, TJ Maxx and Marshalls are all reporting strong quarterly earnings, helped in part by shoppers looking for cheaper bargains as they rein in their spending this holiday season.
While shoppers tighten spending, another sector experiencing remarkable acceleration. Eli Lilly has become the first pharmaceutical company to reach $1 trillion valuation, driven by sustained global demand for its weight management treatments.
Eli Lilly hit $1 trillion in market value on Friday, making it the first drug maker to enter an exclusive club dominated by tech giants and underscoring its rise as a weight loss powerhouse. A more than 35% rally in the company's stock this year has largely been driven by the explosive growth of the weight loss drug market. Novo Nordisk had the early lead in the space, but Lilly's drugs, Mounjaro and Zepbound, have surged in popularity and helped eclipse its rival in prescriptions. Friday's record high put Lilly's stock price at over $1,060 a share, giving it one of the richest valuations in big pharma, about 50 times its anticipated earnings over the next 12 months, according to LSEG data. Since the launch of Zepbound in late 2023, Lilly's stock has gained more than 75%, compared with an over 50% rise in the S&P 500 during the same period. Wall Street estimates the overall weight loss drug market to be worth $150 billion by 2030, with Lilly and Novo together controlling the majority of projected global sales.
Well, that surge in interest around metabolic medicine is also turning attention toward wider research underway in the field. Novo Nordisk is advancing new Alzheimer trials examining whether GLP-1 based therapies could provide measurable cognitive benefits, with results expected to clarify the scope of the drug class.
Studies from Novo Nordisk due early next month will give the strongest indication yet of whether blockbuster GLP-1 drugs, a class being used by millions for diabetes and weight loss, can slow progress of Alzheimer's disease. 2 trials have been described by Novo as a lottery ticket. They're testing its older diabetes pill that has the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy in thousands of people with mild Alzheimer's. The goal is to decrease patients' rate of cognitive decline by at least 20%. Alzheimer's experts say success would usher in a convenient new treatment to slow progression in a condition that affects 50 million people globally. Researchers expect to glean important clues for future study into how and why these types of drugs, which include Eli Lilly's Zepbound and Mounjaro, may be useful against the disease. There are currently 2 drugs approved for slowing Alzheimer's by removing amyloid from the brain. They are Lilly's Kisunla, Leqembi from Eisai and Biogen. They were shown in clinical trials to slow disease progression by close to 30%, although they carry the risk of serious side effects and require regular scans. Novo is slated to present its results on December the 3rd, although it could announce some data before then.
But away from pharmaceuticals, investment pressures are showing up sharply in manufacturing. VinFast has reported a wider quarterly loss, reflecting the scale of its expansion efforts as it pushes further into the global electric vehicle market.
VinFast reported a bigger net loss in the third quarter on Friday. It comes after the electric vehicle maker spent heavily to boost sales and expand. The loss widened to $910.85 million, significantly up from a year ago. The automaker signed 2 loan facilities during the period, totaling $250 million. The Vietnamese company wants to grow internationally despite tariff pressures and low-key demand in the US. But some analysts believe taking on more debt could hit the loss-making firm's margins, while it also works hard to cut costs. One market watcher said VinFast has shifted its focus from the US and Europe to other Asian markets, but added it faces similar challenges competing with Tesla and Chinese EVs. However, revenues for the quarter were around $687 million. That's up almost 47% from last year. E-scooter and e-bike deliveries soared more than 6-fold during the period. Shares of the company were down more than 5% in pre-market trading.
Elsewhere, competition is intensifying through consolidation rather than spending cuts. Paramount, Comcast, Netflix have submitted bids for Warner Brothers, signaling a potential shake-up in the entertainment landscape as major firms compete for scale.
Warner Brothers Discovery has received buyout bids from rivals Paramount, Skydance, Comcast and Netflix. That's according to a source close to the matter on Thursday. Paramount is expected to bid for all of Warner Brothers Discovery, including its cable television networks. The move is supported by the studio's controlling shareholder, Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, who is among the world's richest men. The potential combination would strengthen Paramount's presence in movie theatres, and data shows it would give the firm a 32% share of the North American theatrical market. It would also combine its streaming service Paramount Plus with HBO Max. Reuters exclusively reported that Warner Bros. Discovery's board rejected a mostly cash offer of nearly $24 a share for the company, which valued it at $60 billion. The board publicly announced it would consider strategic options for the studio. NBC Universal's corporate parent Comcast is also interested in Warner's film and television studios and HBO. The entertainment unit has characters including Superman and Batman, who can be used on film and at theme parks. Netflix is also interested in Warner's. The streaming giant aims to access Warner's large film library containing the likes of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Warner Bros. Discovery didn't immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. None of the parties reportedly interested in buying the firm commented either.
And beyond the corporate sphere, broader geopolitical shifts are influencing market sentiment. European defence manufacturers are easing production plans as momentum builds behind a peace framework for Ukraine, prompting a recalibration of supply expectations across the sector.
European defence shares fell to their lowest since early September on Friday. That's as reports about a US-backed deal to end the war in Ukraine pushed traders out of one of the region's best-performing sectors this year. Washington has presented Kyiv with a 28-point plan that would endorse many of Russia's main demands. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was ready for honest work on the plan, though his top security official denied on Friday he had agreed to its outline. An index of aerospace and defence companies was down 2.4% in lunchtime trade, after falling close to 4% earlier. While off a recent peak in October, the index is still up more than 200% since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Shares in Germany's Renk fell around 8%, and Rheinmetall was down roughly 5% before gaining some ground. Defence shares have helped to push the Stock 600 index 10% higher this year. It's hit successive record highs on the potential for a number of governments to spend on regional security.
Well, there we have it. That's the latest from the business landscape across and around the world, from retail pressures to major corporate moves and shifting market dynamics. We'll continue, of course, tracking all of it as the picture develops. That's all I have for you today, Guy. That's all yours.
Morad, thank you very much.
Some interesting stories for sure.
Very interesting selection tonight. Very interesting indeed. Thank you very much. After the break, we turn northwest Nigeria, where 50 girls have escaped their captors, while hundreds of pupils and staff still remain missing. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Let's turn to West Africa now. In northwest Nigeria, 50 students have managed to escape their abductors and are now back safely with their families. This follows the disappearance of hundreds of pupils and staff on Friday. Well, community leaders and security officials are pushing for swift action as the search for the remaining missing girls continues.
More than 300 students and teachers remain missing after one of Nigeria's largest mass school kidnappings, officials and church leaders said on Sunday. Gunmen raided St. Mary's Catholic School in Niger State on Friday, seizing around 315 children and staff, according to the Christian Association of Nigeria. 50 pupils later escaped and reunited with their families. A major military search is underway, and all schools in the area have been ordered to close. Security forces continue to comb forests and remote routes as families wait for news of their children. In Abuja, residents said the rising insecurity has made daily life dangerous and unsettling.
I don't think anybody feels safe. Aside me, I don't think anybody feels safe for what is happening in Nigeria presently, because the kidnapping, the bandits everywhere, the killing, everybody is so scared. Even to sleep, if you are sleeping now, I don't think people are sleeping with their eyes closed. If you hear any noise anywhere, you just wake up, because everywhere is not safe in Nigeria presently.
I think the government should try by all means to adopt a system whereby there will be security agencies that will be released to churches, schools, and other infrastructures that at least the people can be safe when they are around their place of duty and workplaces.
Pope Leo XIV has appealed for the immediate release of the hostages, saying he felt great pain for the young people abducted and their anguished families. The St Mary's attack comes days after 25 girls were kidnapped in Kebbi State, and before that, worshippers were seized in Kwara State. Authorities say bandit groups often target poorly protected boarding schools for ransom.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is A News's Andy Mioch. Andy, thanks for joining us. Harrowing story this, isn't it? And not the first case that we've seen. What's been the reaction from Nigeria's national leadership, and how is the government addressing this obvious public concern about safety?
Well, Guy, understandably, there's a lot of concern. In the country, we've heard residents of Nigeria speak of that in our spring package. Obviously, the attack that saw more than 300 children and teachers kidnapped from a Christian school in Nigeria's Niger state has took all of the media attention. Of course, that was not the only incident that happened in the country last week. Following this spate of attacks, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu decided to cancel his trips to South Africa and Angola, where he was due to attend the G20 summit and the African Union European Union summit. In response to these attacks, he has also given out an order for an additional 30,000 police officers to be recruited in the National Police Force. Authorities in at least 5 Nigerian states in the north have shut down all public schools. The government has also moved to close down 47 colleges in the north as well. We have got all these details and numbers from the St. Mary's attack from the Catholic Church and the Christian Association of Nigeria. Now, if these numbers are officially confirmed, this would make it the worst school abduction ever since 2014, and that infamous case of the kidnapping of 276 Chibok girls by the Boko Haram militants. We can recall that case. It provoked a global outcry. Even the then First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, joined and amplified the campaign for the release of those girls. Now, a decade later from that case, in September, we've seen a report by the United Nations saying that 91 out of those 276 girls remain captive or are missing. UN's Committee on the Elimination of the Discrimination against Women concluded that Nigeria has failed to prevent targeted attacks on schools and communities, failed to protect schoolgirls from abduction and ensure their right to education. At the time, the chair of that UN committee said that the abduction of the Chibok girls was not an isolated tragedy, but a part of a series of mass abductions across northern Nigeria, although it was the first one that was publicized in such a way that it gained global traction. The report, once again from September, so 2 months ago, said that after the 2014 case, more than 1,400 students have been kidnapped. That, of course, doesn't take into account the events of last week, so we can say with this UN estimate that more than 1,700 students have been kidnapped since. The report said that the girls were often taken for ransom, forced marriages, human trafficking, and prisoner exchange.
Wow, very, very harrowing indeed. And you mentioned the 2014 case, many other cases. What do we know about the patterns? I mean, you touched on some of it there, the method, the motivation. How similar are these attacks to previous attacks of this kind?
Well, if we take a look at just this past week, there's been a number of cases. On Monday alone, there were 2 attacks. In the first case, armed men stormed a predominantly Muslim school for girls in the northwestern Kebbi state, as we've mentioned earlier in the package, and seized 25 students. In a different case also, on Monday, another armed group abducted 64 people, including women and children, from their homes in the Zamfara state. A day later, on Tuesday, gunmen attacked the Christ Apostolic Church in the central Kwara state, killing 2 people and abducting 38 worshippers, according to church officials. Now, those church officials have said the gunmen had issued a ransom demand for 100 million naira, or roughly $69,000 per worshipper. The governor of that state later confirmed that all the 38 abducted worshippers have been released on Sunday.
Now, obviously, everybody relating to a school or a college or family of any kind will be concerned. There's widespread worry across the country. But when you look at this particular attack, coming after the attacks in Kebbi, Kwara, is there a pattern emerging about how the bandits in question are perhaps selecting their chosen targets?
Well, we haven't had anyone publicly claim responsibility for any of these attacks that we've seen last week as of yet, although the perpetrators of the church raid on Tuesday appear to be in it for the ransom money. According to the news reports from the ground, the attacks are indiscriminate and follow a similar pattern. Gangs known locally as bandits turn up somewhere, shoot sporadically, abduct victims, and then vanish into the forests of Nigeria. Security experts, local security experts, are saying that such attacks and kidnappings are motivated by money, and that schools are an easy target as they lack adequate security. And on the other hand, parents are more likely to, find money for the ransom to rescue their children. According to the Lagos-based SBM intelligence consultancy, there's just a lot of money to be made in that, quote, enterprise.
Wow, and authorities clearly are responding, although it has much in the way of wider protective measures, has much been actually put in place beyond school closures, beyond college closures. What is it that's really happening when it comes to protecting families and children?
Besides that pledge for an additional 30,000 police officers made by the president, his office said on Sunday that all police in the very important persons protection services had been redeployed to focus on core duties, especially in remote areas which are more prone to attacks. Now, when it comes to those VIP protection services, a report published earlier this month by the European Union Agency for Asylum said that more than a quarter of Nigeria's estimated 370,000 strong police force, so some 100,000 officers, were, quote, assigned to protect politicians and VIPs rather than being tasked on serving the general population. VIPs in need will now be able to request armed personnel from the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. Now, that's just one of those figures that kind of paints a picture.
And Andy, Nigeria is a country with a geographic religious divide, isn't it? Has there been any sense, any indication that these attacks have any kind of religious dimension to them?
Well, it's very difficult to determine such things, especially in these specific cases, but I can give you some broader strokes of the picture. Most of northern Nigeria, which spans more than 20 of the country's 36 states, is blanketed by insecurity. However, the reasons vary. In the northwest, armed gangs without any known religious or political motives carry out ransom kidnappings and hide in those forests. Nigeria also has vast, remote, and ungoverned spaces where many more attacks go unreported. Now, as to the northeast, ultra-hardline Islamist militant groups such as Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province are waging an insurgency that has caused a major humanitarian crisis in Nigeria. It has made more than 2 million people internal refugees, and it killed thousands over the last 15 years. Now, in the food-producing region of central Nigeria, where the mostly Muslim north meets with the mostly Christian south, there are deadly clashes over religion and ethnicity, but mostly about land and water. According to the International Crisis Group, there have been numerous incidents of faith-based violence, but Muslims have suffered just as much as Christians. Nigeria, which is home to some 220 million people and more than 200 ethnic groups, says that claims that Christians face persecution in the country misrepresent the complex security situation. Now, we've also heard from a senior U.S. State Department official on Thursday saying that Washington is considering sanctions and Pentagon engagement on counterterrorism as part of a plan to compel the Nigerian government to better protect Christian communities and religious freedoms. Now, this, of course, comes after U.S. President Donald Trump back on November 1st said on social media that, quote, if the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into that, quote, now disgraced country guns a-blazing to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists.
Very, very complex situation, very strong language there. A harrowing story, Andy, and we appreciate your balanced analysis of it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we head to the day's other major news stories in the region. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Now, as I'm sure our regular viewers know, analysis from across the region is extremely important to us here at A News. So let's now speak to some of our colleagues around the region as we take a look at some regional news. Well, a joint Azerbaijani-Turkish think tank gathering has concluded in Shusha, bringing together senior analysts, academics and policy voices from both sides. The discussions focused on reinforcing strategic cooperation and aligning shared approaches to regional and wider international matters. A News' Orkan Amashov reports.
Hello, I'm joining you from Shusha, where today the first Azerbaijan-Turkey think tank forum just now concluded. And in the building behind Shusha Hotel now, in one of its private rooms currently, participants of this inaugural forum, inaugural think tank forum, are actually now having a private exchange discussing the outcomes of the three panel discussions, as a result of which, as we understand, some sort of proposals may emerge and probably will emerge, and those proposals will be communicated to their governments of Turkey and Azerbaijan. After all, think tanks are not making decisions as such, but they're preparing decisions for their respective governments. That has been at the very heart of any think tank anywhere in the world. Today was a very interesting day. It was a one-day event, three panel discussions. I was moderating the very first one, where the key subject matter was the question related to foreign policy lines pursued by Baku and Ankara, the points of convergence between them, which are absolutely palpable, and they lie naturally at the heart of treaty-bound strategic alliance between Baku and Ankara, and also, of course, certain points which are less palpable and not as simple as they may appear. Naturally, in addition to the bilateral interaction between Azerbaijan and Turkey, which is multidimensional, multifaceted, which are based on the number of elements, including defense cooperation, trade, and so forth, including energy element at the heart of them. Of course, these two countries are coordinating their efforts in different parts of the world, in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in relation to many, many complicated matters. Naturally, Azerbaijan's inclusion within the Central Asian format and Central Asia 5+1 becoming effectively Central Asia 6 is a very important moment in the context of the Baku-Ankara ties. Effectively, this is essential also in the context of growing importance of organization of Turkic states, where Baku and Ankara cooperate, and without their cooperation, without a proper connection and coordination between these two countries, naturally the prospects of that organization will not be as bright as they should be in the light of the proper developments. Naturally, Middle East was one of the key areas, and during my panel there was a discussion surrounding the coordination between Ankara and Baku in relation to Iraq in particular and Syria in particular after December 2024. The question of the Palestine has emerged as well, and naturally Iran was one of the subjects, and the question to what extent actually Azerbaijan and Iran, which are actually developing their relations, they're trying to improve their relations, could achieve a degree of affinity necessary for their growth of trade, was one of the subjects. It was a wide-ranging discussion. A number of issues has been, of course, naturally discussed. Azerbaijan and Turkey are allies. Shusha Declaration is very clear. A Shusha Declaration is an international treaty, but it does not necessarily mean that Baku and Ankara share the same perspective in the same fashion in relation to everything. Within the framework of this, what parties like to describe as a brotherly allied interaction, there are certain nuances, there are certain differences, but of course they are naturally regulated as a result of proper coordination. The question of Armenia, the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia, naturally its correlation with Turkish-Armenian normalization have also been discussed as one of the key points. Elections in Armenia, which is set to take place in June of this year, was one of the key points. And there is a question, of course, if that election does not result in current incumbent Prime Minister winning the elections, defeating his detractors, what will be the implications for Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process? What will be the implication for Azerbaijani Turkish-Armenian normalization? All of these things, of course, have been at the heart of discussions. As I said earlier, it was a very wide-ranging discussion. Think tanks are not there to make decisions on behalf of governments, but rather prepare quality decisions, or rather prepare foundational basis, argumentation for those decisions by those governments to be taken. And this forum, of course, was not different in that particular respect. Well, that's all for now. Orkan Amishov, A News.
To Tashkent now, and leaders from across the region are in Uzbekistan for high-level discussions on cooperation. Officials there have set out a new model designed to strengthen joint economic work. A News's Sevil Rajabova in Tashkent brings us more.
Tashkent hosted a high-level roundtable titled Central Asia Towards a New Phase of Regional Cooperation, where diplomats and experts discussed the outcomes of the 7th consultative meeting of Central Asian leaders held on 16 November. The summit brought together leaders of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan, with Azerbaijan joining as a full member. Leaders outlined a new model of regional cooperation, highlighting joint network and economy, logistics, security, energy, ecology and water management.
The initiative proposed by the leadership of Uzbekistan to transform the consultative meeting format into a community of Central Asia is aimed at creating an institutional framework capable of ensuring the systematic implementation of the agreements reached. Each state demonstrates its independence, acting as a strong force shaping its own development in political, economic, environmental and other spheres. The Tashkent summit laid the foundation for a more integrated platform for regional cooperation. This regional format offers all 6 countries broader opportunities for dialogue with potential partners.
A landmark decision of the summit was the admission of Azerbaijan as a full participant in the consultative meeting format.
You know, our relationship is truly an alliance. There is no level higher than that. And you can see the dynamic for yourself. The progress has been remarkable. I don't want to single out one direction over another, but it is important to note that this process really began with Uzbekistan. The development of our cooperation with Azerbaijan, and especially the deepening of ties with Uzbekistan, marked the transition into this new stage.
Leaders supported a set of new economic initiatives, including the development of a regional trade and economic cooperation program to 2035, the creation of a common investment space, and the expansion of e-commerce. They also highlighted major connectivity priorities such as the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, the Trans-Afghan Corridor, and the strengthening of Trans-Caspian transport routes. Participants proposed declaring 2026-2036 the decade of practical action on water use and establishing a regional competence center for water management. Speakers noted that the results of the summit demonstrate growing political cohesion in Central Asia and mark a new stage of integration, now including Azerbaijan as a full participant of consultative meeting of Central Asian leaders. It is Sevil Rajapov reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Kazakhstan is hosting the president of Turkmenistan as the two countries look to deepen their strategic partnership. Energy cooperation, regional transport routes and plans to expand trade are all central to the talks. A News' Fariza Kalamazina is in Almaty with more on the visit and what both sides are aiming to achieve.
President of Turkmenistan Serdar Berdimuhamedov arrives in Kazakhstan on a state visit. The program includes high-level talks focused on the next steps in the country's strategic partnership. Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan have already established one of the most extensive legal frameworks in Central Asia, with about 70 agreements in force, including the Treaty of Friendship and the Treaty on Strategic Partnership. According to official data, bilateral trade reached $555.7 million last year, and both sides aim to raise this figure to $1 billion, which they view as an achievable target given the current pace of cooperation. Energy remains a key area. Turkmen gas is an important source of supply for southern Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is also interested in participating in the third phase of developing the Galkanish gas field. And ongoing talks between Kazakh gas and Turkmen gas show that both sides are considering deeper collaboration in gas production and infrastructure. Experts note that discussions now include possible transit routes for Turkmen gas through Kazakhstan toward China, Iran, and markets in South Asia. Transport links are another major topic. Both countries play important roles in the international North-South corridor. Analysts say the launch of the Southern Transit Corridor could reduce logistics costs for Kazakh exports to the Middle East and South Asia by 15 to 20%. This state visit by Serdar Berdimuhamedov to Astana is viewed as an opportunity to clarify the next steps in cooperation. According to experts, the two sides may agree on new measures in energy, transport routes and investment policy. And the final agreements will show how quickly the two countries can move from negotiations to implementing concrete joint projects. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
After the break, we'll be taking a look at the top trending social media stories with Fidan Sayadli. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Prime Time. Now, Fidan Sayadli is with us to dive into the world of social media. Fidan, what's on the agenda today?
Lots of happening around the world today, from serious challenges to inspiring moments and fascinating developments. Let's take a look. The Amazon is hitting a really worrying point right now. Deforestation and illegal mining are shrinking the forest. Rainfall is dropping, and the whole river system is failing it. Here is a quick breakdown of what's going on.
The fate of the Amazon River is inextricably connected with the destiny of the Amazon Basin. Well, the river system draws its lifeline from the vast hydrological resources of the basin. Well, over the past couple of years, we have noticed a massive decline, of course, in the forest landmass within this area. And of course, naturally, deforestation, particularly intensified as a result of illegal mining and also illegal logging, has given rise to decline in rainfall. And rainfall decline effectively means that the water shrinkage will be taken for granted. Naturally, everything connected with each other. Well, over the past 10 years, there has been a 14% decline in biodiversity in this area. It is connected with deforestation. Although we know for sure that the rates of deforestation have declined over the past 5-10 years, what is also very certain to everybody, including ourselves, that if more than 25% of the Amazon basin is lost, this area's ability to sustain itself and to replenish itself will be lost. And then implications will be tedious to contemplate, not in the context of this basin, but also the entire river system of this region and that of the entire world.
Over in Ukraine, Kharkiv faced a major drone strike this weekend, with multiple casualties and damage across the city. Here is a video of emergency crews working in the chaos. Meanwhile, on a very different kind of front, Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has been active again, and the lava flows were on another level. Here is what it looked like. Speaking of stress, NATO isn't sitting still, so NATO is basically stepping up its game on the eastern flank. They are upgrading sensors, defenses, and even testing new offensive tech to keep Russia and China guessing. Here's a quick look at what they are working on.
We have to ensure that the eastern flank has a defense in depth that allows us to not only protect ourselves from some of the drones that we've seen, but any drones that may be produced in the future. So we want to make sure that we have sensors in depth. We want to make sure we have effectors in depth to provide that deterrence. So I think in general, we just need to continue moving forward with a lot of the capabilities. Again, you can't prepare for everything, but at the same time, we have to also create a dilemma for our adversaries. So we're just not on the defensive, right? Today was a defensive capability, but some of the next demonstrations that we're doing are offensive capabilities. So at the same time, we try to understand how do we protect ourselves, we also want to create a dilemma. So a lot of the narrative is always, what is China doing, what is Russia doing? Well, we want China and Russia also thinking, what is NATO doing?
On a lighter note, big news in the music world. The Silkway Star competition just crowned its first winner. Michelle Joseph from Mongolia wowed the judges and millions of viewers across Asia. Check out the moment she was announced.
Silkway Star жобасының жеңімпазы Mongolia, Michelle Joseph!
Wow! A new star has emerged on the Asian music scene. Mongolian singer Michelle Joseph has won the inaugural Silkway Star International Vocal Competition held in Kazakhstan's capital. The live finale was broadcast on Jibek Jolly in Kazakhstan, with simultaneous broadcasts in Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia, reaching millions of viewers worldwide. 7 finalists from Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, China, Malaysia, Mongolia, and Uzbekistan performed in their native languages, presenting original compositions and visually stunning stage productions. The show featured tailor-made costumes and creative staging designed by Kazakh stylist teams. The winner was awarded on stage by Wang Delu, head of the Eurasian Bureau at China Media Group, and Raushan Kajibayeva, CEO of the Presidential Broadcasting Corporation of Kazakhstan. The winner was determined by a 50-50 combination of professional jury scores and online audience votes. Over 500,000 viewers from 43 countries participated, highlighting the competition's wide international appeal. Silkway Star has set a new benchmark for Asian music competitions, combining cultural exchange, world-class performance, and a celebration of Asia's diverse musical talent.
And music isn't just making headlines in Asia. Mariachis in Mexico City went all out this weekend to honor Saint Cecilia. Colorful costumes, lively music, and a plea for help keeping their families and tradition afloat. Let's take a look.
I bought 10 years ago this image of Saint Cecilia. It is a figure of our devotion. Every year we, the mariachi colleagues, come to give thanks to our patron saint for all the work of the year, for all the favors received, for the miracles.
Well, unfortunately, we often don't have support from the government. Before we were 10 or 12 in the band. Now we are 5. The point is that our traditions don't disappear. Our genre, what represents us as Mexicans. We need that every year it doesn't disappear, and that Santa Cecilia gives us a lot of work to sustain our livelihood.
From living traditions to living history. Here is something really cool. The world's oldest record shop is still going strong in Malta. Vinyls, old posters, and a ton of history packed into one tiny street. Take a look inside.
The shop was founded in 1885 by my great-great-grandfather. His name was Giovanni D'Amato. He came from Naples in Italy and set up shop in this very place. Since 1885 till today, the shop has remained operating in the industry and never closed, not even during the Second World War. The only time we had to shut down for a very short while was during the 6 weeks of the COVID pandemic. Through 140 years, we had many different challenges. We had 2 world wars, which Malta was affected, especially by the Second World War, where Valletta was the most bombed place in the world. In fact, 2 doors up, it was all bombarded, but this shop premises survived. Today, it has the industry is back to some good days, even though about 90% of the record shops have closed because of the download issue. And there are a lot of young kids turning back to records. Instead of streaming, they buy records for collectability.
And finally, politics meets performance. So Maduro had a quiet moment at the presidential palace. He joined a student day march and even danced to a remix of his own speech. And with everything going on between the US and Venezuela, it was quite a scene to watch. Here is the video.
Please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Peace for the
That's all for today. Don't forget to check out our website at anews.tv and of course all our social media platforms. Back to you, Guy.
Fidan, thank you. Great selection there. And I will never feel insecure about my middle-aged dancing ever again. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's turn our attention now to something more serious. Ukrainians are raising fresh doubts about ongoing Geneva discussions aimed at ending the conflict, with many worried that the ideas being explored could leave the country disadvantaged. Kyiv's leadership, however, insists the diplomatic push remains constructive and says work with international allies will continue.
Ukrainians voiced strong scepticism on Monday over new peace talks in Geneva involving Ukraine, the United States and European partners. Many residents said they doubt the discussions will end the war with Russia.
I don't believe that there will be a lasting peace after these negotiations, because there is a side that cannot be trusted.
US President Donald Trump's special plan is, in general, a capitulation for Ukraine. I think the Ukrainian people will not agree. Even if they sign, they need to be implemented. The Ukrainian people will be the ones to do it, and they do not agree with this.
Some residents welcomed the renewed international focus on ending the conflict, but many said they have little confidence that any new agreement would hold, pointing to past attempts that failed to deliver lasting results.
I believe that it must come to something. It cannot continue like this. Under certain conditions they should stop this war, but I don't know under which. But giving up Ukrainian land is not right either.
First, this is already some positive news for me. Thank God that somehow the world community reacted to these shameful 28 points, because it would have simply meant Ukraine's capitulation.
People in Kiev told reporters they worry the proposals on the table could leave Ukraine in a weaker position. Their concerns grew after earlier draft ideas reportedly included giving up territory and placing limits on Ukraine's military plans. Ukraine's chief negotiator, Andriy Yermak, described the latest round of talks as highly productive. He said discussions would continue in the coming days.
While peace talks continued, Russian forces launched a massive overnight drone attack on Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Well, local officials say 4 people were killed and 12 others injured. Video from the scene shows emergency crews battling large fires and pulling bodies from the rubble. Regional authorities say the injured include 2 children aged 11 and 12 as rescue teams continue clearing debris from the targeted residential area. Well, earlier today, my colleague Bakhtiar Hasanov spoke to Lieutenant General Marco Serona, a distinguished military analyst and a former senior commander, who told us what this deal means for Ukraine.
It seems from the words of Marco Rubio and the Yermak from Ukraine that was very productive yesterday, the meeting. Let's see how the things are going to proceed. We know that the initial plan that was handed over by the United States to Ukraine and to the Europeans, it was not good for Ukraine and for the Europeans, as it was said yesterday and Saturday, and due to two main questions, and you have already spoke about that. It's the question of territories, how to handle the territories in the future after the ceasefire. And the issues of sovereignty of Ukraine, of course. It's the top numbers of the armed forces. It's the Ukraine should not have some kind of military assets and things like that. In this plan, we know that has been settled. It seems by Witkoff and Dmitriev some 1 month ago or something like that. And the main problem of the initial proposal is that is based, in my view and from others, in a Russia unreality and an American weakness. So the Russian reality is that the narrative that is behind the proposal is that it was not Russia that invaded Ukraine. The war is the main guilties of war is the West and Ukraine, something that it's difficult to understand. And the other reality is that seems that Russia it's near to have a military victory in Ukraine. What is not, it's not true, as we know. So it's the main point. And of course, when I say American weakness is that Donald Trump is having, as we know, internal problems, very huge problems due to several things, and he needs to urgently have a peace plan for Ukraine. And so that's the American weakness. The other point of American weakness is that behind all of these relations with Russia is big business, as you know, for few people in the United States and few people in Russia. That's the main problem that is behind this initial proposal.
General Sironia, Ukraine and several European states have expressed concern that the original 28-point plan favors Russia. What elements of the plan are most problematic?
The most problematic is the initial plan was the proposal of Russia to gain territory. As we say in the office, not in the military operation. So they want all the rest of the Donbass, and of course the incorporation, the definitive incorporation of all the land that Russia is now occupying, definitely be in the Russia lands or Russian Federation land. Something that is not acceptable for Ukrainians, and not only for Ukraine. It is something that is against international law and the UN Charter, as we know, because inviolability or no violation of borders, it's something that is very, very much written in the UN Charter. So it's something that is illegal under the point of view of international law. The other is sovereignty aspects that Russia was trying to condition it, the Ukrainians for the future. We have problems also with the reconstruction, who is going to pay the Russian for the assets and other things, but things that have been changed, it seems, in the second draft that is going to be continuous discussing today.
And if Kiev were to accept territorial concessions, how would that reshape the military balance and future security architecture in Eastern Europe?
The second draft that was discussed yesterday concerning the security guarantees involve a more huge, more bigger framework. Most probably an accord or an agreement at the European with the United States, the European countries, and Russia with a framework for the future. Something that we have seen in '75 with the Finland agreement, something like that at the time with the Soviet Union, but something that should address all the security issues in Europe involving Russia and Europeans and the United States, of course. The concession of territory is something that is not acceptable. We know. But the other point of the security guarantees that the Russians don't want is the eventual presence of allied force of Ukraine inside Ukrainian territory, and not any presence of strong military assets like airplanes and missiles, long-range missiles, and things on that. Something that Ukraine was not able to, and is not able to accept, of course.
The plan reportedly includes limits on the size of Ukraine's armed forces. How realistic is such a provision while the conflict remains unresolved?
It's not correct, of course. First of all, in the top of that is the issue of sovereignty. So it's not the plan does not say that the Russian armed forces should have 1 million or 5,000 or something like that. So it's not correct to address a top limit of the amount of Ukrainian forces. That is not possible. So nevertheless, the second draft has 800,000 militaries, what is something that is near the reality, and is the top, of course, is the maximum, I suppose, that Ukraine can generate. So it's something more in reality. Of course, we know that if the disagreement goes forward, as everybody hopes, of course, we need peace. The ceasefire is not going to end with the military presence from both sides. So the Ukrainians should keep the needs, the armed force needs in the front line, of course, at least, because this plan is not the end of the end of the war. As you know, it's a kind of conditions for a ceasefire, and after a lot of things have to be discussed, including the possible exchange of territories, minimal exchange, of course, but it's something that should address. And nobody can say us that the war will not reopen again. So it's the Ukrainians have to have the minimum capabilities in present for deterrence, of course, and to fight if Russia can come back again.
Also, General Sironia, how much leverage does Washington currently have over Kiev's negotiating position, given Ukraine's dependence on U.S. security and financial support?
For the time being, more security support than financial support, because we know that almost all the things the military sets that the United States it's deploying will be paid, or are going to be paid by the Europeans. So it's the leverage. What can I say? This the red lines for Ukraine, we know, is to accept the handover of the territories permanently to Russia is something that is not acceptable. Of course, the de facto situation has to be accepted, of course, and discussed in the future how to recover them by diplomatic means. That's what Ukraine said, and that is it's a no-go. The other is the sovereignty aspect issues, saying that the first plan spoke about the elections in 100 days. Something it's impossible to do. The number of people in the armed forces, the types of military assets where they should be placed outside Ukraine, things like that are not acceptable to us. So of course we know that Donald Trump has some links with the Russians. So let's see, because this proposal that is going to sort out here in Geneva will be not the end of this. So the Russians have to come back again to discuss the issue. Let's see if Donald Trump at this point in time buy the proposal of the Europeans and the Ukrainians, of course, but leverage its limit. So when we spoke about the future of the countries and the people of Ukraine, the Ukrainians have the last word. So and the last word from Ukrainians. If they want to keep fighting for their own rights, who's going to oppose that? What the maximum that United States can do, it's not support Ukraine anymore, and that in that situation will be difficult, but the Europeans have to do that.
And also, how might Ukraine's domestic politics react to any concessions, especially regarding territory or military restrictions?
You know that the Ukraine has constitutional restraints in the giving the territories. So it's something that, even in the possibility that I don't believe that is going to happen, of to end some territories, the constitution should be changed, and that is a process that is very, very complex, as we know. So that's one of the points. The other point, I suppose, we know that the political environment in Ukraine is its tensions, but I suppose that when we speak about sovereignty, independence, territories, almost all the Ukrainians are in the same side. They don't want to give back territories, and they want to be an independent country in the future, European country, and with security guarantees from allies.
Well, that does bring us to the end of Prime Time. Please do join us tomorrow for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.